All right, well, it's 7:05, so let's get started. Uh, and I just want to say for everyone who's on the call tonight that, first of all, thank you for being here. I'm really happy that you all tuned in to find out, how do I get started as a tour director and what even is it, right? Because I know I didn't know what it was for the first 4 or 5 years of guiding. I'd never even heard of it. But I have to say that I went to the IATDG conference last year, and even though I was not looking for more work, I just went, as a representative APT to learn what it is, to make connections for our association, find out what it was all about. And I got more work out of it. And I had people emailing me, the guy from Alaska, he wasn't even on my list. I didn't even interview with him. He's like, "Oh, I saw your little 3-minute thing and I loved it. And would you consider coming to work in Alaska?" I was just like, "No, I'm not considering living in Alaska. I am 57 years old and I'm not going to Alaska." But I think for especially younger people, and not necessarily younger people, anybody who loves to travel, I just think it's a really great option to learn about and find out what it is so that, you have more options as a guide, right? So I'm really, really excited that so many of you are here today. And we're going to have the recording, so people who are not here will still be able to access it later and watch. So with that being said, let's get started. I think I'm just going to let me just introduce you all quickly. We have Elaine here, Elaine Rodriguez. She is the Executive Director of the International Association of Tour Directors and Guides, IATDG. So she is here. She's going to start us off. And then we have Matthew Baker, and I'm waving there. And we have Pam Boudrot, and we have Steve Norkus. And all three of them are APT members now. None of them live in Philadelphia, but they all do tours in multi-cities, and sometimes the city that they're doing is in Philadelphia. So being part of the association benefits them to know what's going on here for when they bring groups here, especially because they don't live here, right? So just to kind of keep up with what's going on. So they're going to share with you there. They all have very different experiences, how they came to tour directing, what they do now as tour directors. So I think that'll be really, really interesting, the different perspectives. So let's start with Elaine. Elaine, do you have a PowerPoint presentation?
I do.
Okay, let me make you a co-host so that you can share your presentation.
I got it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, again, my name is Elaine Rodriguez. I'm the executive director of IATDG. I know it's a mouthful, but our association, our members, are tour directors, tour guides, and the tour operators who hire them. Our mission is to connect tour operators with with experienced and vetted tour directors and tour guides to staff their tours. And just a little bit quickly about myself, I started tour directing in 2010. I was from New York City. I was a licensed and still am a licensed New York City tour guide, also Washington D.C. I did run many a tour in Philadelphia. I was a full-time tour director and tour guide until 2019. I went into corporate side and became a tour director, recruiter and manager at Tauk, and then I became head of operations at CE Tours, and now I am executive director here. So I have done all the things. I have done all the different roles. So we're here to talk about tour directing, right? So now, those of you, all of you being guides in Philadelphia, it's perfectly possible that some of you are already kind of veering into tour director uh, territory, and maybe you don't realize that you are. So, what I usually tell people is with, of course, tour guides, I always say they know a lot about a place, meaning like a city. Of course, many places within that city, whereas tour directors know a little bit about a lot of places, right? Because we kind of go everywhere. And tour guides generally go home at night. They run their gig, right? However many tours they have for that day. But what unites them all is that they get to sleep in their own bed for the most part at the end of the day. Whereas with tour directors, it's a little different. Should have shared, let me share my screen. Oh, there we go. Um, All right, let me start this. So tour directors are responsible for leading a group on a travel experience over several days with the same guests. They're jacks of all trades. They deliver commentary about sites, handle the organization and logistics of getting the group to and from where it's been a long day, y'all, to and from where they need to be. So whether the tour is 2 days, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, that tour director is with that group the entire time. And the tour director is charged with executing the entire tour that the tour operator has sold to these guests. And the goal is to make sure it goes off as much without a hitch, as always a hitch, but as much without a hitch as possible, entertain, make sure the guests are having a great time. So they come back and travel over and over again with that same tour operator. That is the responsibility and the job of a tour director. So they're not going home at night. They're staying at the hotel and traveling from city to city, spot to spot with their guests. And so tour directors' responsibilities are many. The first thing that I always tell people is that tour directing is not a travel job. Tour directing is a customer service job. You are a traveling customer service rep for whatever tour operator you are working for, running that tour for. And oftentimes, for these guests, you are the only face of the company that they will ever meet. Everything else is online. They might register for the tour online or make a phone call, or they even do it through their travel agent. They never communicate with the tour operator at all. As a tour director, you are the face of that company. As such, you are in charge of, as I said, executing the tour from day 1 to day 7 or whatever. So all of the logistics, everything, what time you start, what time you end, where you get in the middle, liaising with everybody along the way, the local guides, the hotels, the restaurants, all of that is the tour director responsibility. Commentary is definitely something that tour directors do as well. A lot of times, because most tours will have local guides in different spots. So let's say you visiting 4 different cities. I used to do a lot of tours in Portugal, let's say. So, we went to about 4 different cities and had a local guide in each one. So the commentary that I was giving as a tour director, you're kind of an ambassador for wherever it is that you are touring, right? So a lot of times the information that you're giving are things on standard of living, how much do things cost, what's education like, what certainly in history, there's a lot of history you're talking about. But because you have these local guides, what you're doing is you're connecting the dots along the way. You're creating this through line so they really understand and get a perspective of where it is that they are. So those moments as tour guides that you have, those aha moments that you see in guests when you're introducing something to about Philadelphia, to your city, and their faces light up and you see that they've got that connection. They get it, right? Well, you get that a lot, of course, also with tour directing, except it's in many different places around the world. You are introducing them to and giving them those aha moments, making those connections in many different spots all around. And you're creating this perspective for them that they may not have had otherwise. And those are really, really special moments. You're a team leader. Who's your team? Your motor coach driver is part of your team. The restaurants, the hotels, these are all part of your team. Your guests are part of your team as well. You are their leader. A lot of times they will follow you like sheep. They won't know where they're going. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. As long as your tour director tells them where to be, they're going to be there. You're a troubleshooter. You're an entertainer. You're an accountant for your expenses and stuff. You're a little bit of a psychologist, sociologist. You really learn how to read people really fast because you are traveling with a whole group of people, strangers many times, for 7 days, and things are going to come up, right? And so you really learn how to manage that. And those are just some of the responsibilities. There are many, many more. Proofreading itineraries, which you certainly, I'm sure, do now. Tracking bags, your vendor confirmations, managing expectations, checking flight statuses, partnering with drivers, partnering with local guides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tour directing, I'm always very honest about this. Tour directing can be a very, very challenging job, Again, you don't go home at night. So you are sometimes thousands of miles away from home. You could have had a really challenging day because sometimes people are not happy no matter where they are. They're in the most beautiful place in the world and they just want to be miserable, right? And still, you kind of chug along and you have to be sure that that is not affecting the rest of the group and that the tour is going off as well as possible. And I'll tell you, there are days where you look like this. This was me. This was Ireland. I think it was 2014 or so. This wasn't the end. This wasn't the end of the trip. This wasn't even the end of the day. We had dinner after this, but I had a really challenging group and I just could not wait to see the back of them. It was really, really hard. But and so it's very natural to think like, so why do this? As a tour guide, I get to just, it's not that it's not challenging. Tour guiding can be super challenging, but at least I'm with my family and I get to go home and all of that kind of thing. But I have to tell you that tour directing has been an incredibly rewarding experience for me, and it's why people do it decade after decade. And I mean that. I was on a tour in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand, and the tour director had been working for that same company tour directing since 1978, the year I was born. So people do this forever. And it's because it is incredibly rewarding. I mean, I have done some incredible things. I've seen some incredible things. And, I was in Cuba when Obama and Raul Castro made the announcements they're opening up relations. I've been to the Vatican at night. I've crossed the Arctic Circle. I've played with elephants. I've done like all these amazing things, and it's all part of tour directing. I mean, I've got horror stories as well, but that's just kind of the way it goes. And so that's just a very, very quick view of tour directing. And I'm sure some of you are already maybe doing some of that in Philadelphia. You maybe have a student, maybe you're doing student groups or what have you that are coming 3 or 4 days and you're staying at the hotel with them and you're managing all those things and didn't realize you're being a tour director. But that, in a nutshell, is what tour directing is. And and yeah, that's what I got for you. The Marianne, the other thing I can talk about later. But is there anything else that you wanted me to cover?
No, I think that's good. And then maybe we'll have the other three go, and then you can come back on and just talk about
Yep.
IATDG and what it does and
No
you know,
problem.
give your
All
little
right.
plug for that. So why don't we have Matt, do you want to go next? Just
Sure.
taking alphabetically.
Although, if I'd known I was going to have to follow Elaine, uh, Elaine, we go back more than a decade, don't we? At least.
Oh yeah, I think it was like 2013 when I went to that GANIC meeting for the first time. So yeah.
Good heavens. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but if you were born in 78, then you got a very interesting portrait hanging in your attic. Uh, and kudos to anyone who gets that reference. So, hi. My name is Matt, and I make my living telling stories. Whether I am on stage or in front of a camera or in the streets of my favorite cities, storytelling has always been my raison d'etre. And so the best way that I can contribute to what we are talking about today is to tell you guys some stories. I was working as an actor in New York City, looking for something that might pay a little better and be a little steadier and more reliable because at the time I had a 1-year-old baby, speaking of things that go back a while. And I'm chatting on the corner with a double-decker bus driver who suddenly says, "You should be a tour guide. You have a voice." And I had no idea how life-changing that compliment would ultimately become. In the beginning, it was just another day job. And I didn't know it would become a calling and a career. But for 20 years now, I have been a local guide in my home city, but about 15 years into those 20, I started thinking, how nice it would be to get well acquainted with other cities like Philadelphia and DC and Boston. So how to go about that? Well, all those tour companies that had used me as a local step-on guide knew me, and I had a good reputation with them. At least I think I did. But they knew me as a New Yorker, and I wanted to learn the road. So enter Elaine's organization, the IATDG. It's not the only group of its kind, but it is definitely by far my favorite. The hiring hall where the interviews are held has led to my working with 4 of my top 6 clients. One of the other 2 was a company that, as Marianne talked about, I did not interview with them, and I work with them anyway, because just informal conversations at the conferences led to a beautiful working relationship. And I cannot recommend highly enough the importance of memberships, active memberships in such organizations. It's not only good for interviews, it's good for networking. It's good for, oh, I'm not available on those dates, but call my friend Elaine. She can do those dates, and you want to be on a lot of people's lists that way. So the 6th major client of mine is a reminder that you never know under what circumstances you might run into someone who can help you. On the day that my wife and I moved our daughter into her dorm on her first day of college, we're at a reception for all the parents who had just said goodbye to their kids. And we're chatting with another couple who was also, empty nesting. And in the course of the conversation, I just casually mentioned being a tour guide. And the husband from this other couple says, "No kidding, I work in student travel." By the end of the evening, Tom Merrill of Bob Rogers Travel was pressing his business card into my hand saying, "Seriously, call me." And I'm like, "Oh, I will." And to this day, BRT is one of my best clients. So with that in mind, let me encourage you to look for tour operators that you are likely to love. The main reason I love working with BRT so much in particular is that all their groups are school bands, choirs, and drama clubs, and those are my kids. I was one, I had one, I speak that language. So when preparing for interviews, the most important thing is do your homework. Study every inch of a tour operator's website and their mission statement, and decide if you think you're a good fit. TOs, that Alaska story was great. TOs might well be doing tours in a part of the world that you don't want to be in, or some might only want graduates of one of the training programs that I never attended. One I remember at the last conference was all about travel as part of a Christian ministry. I'm Jewish. It would be utterly disrespectful of me to ask these folks to waste their time interviewing me. So don't develop a reputation as somebody who does that. Do that homework. All of this serves as a reminder that what we do is a deeply social profession. Our personalities are our greatest asset and calling card. When you tell your favorite story or you visit your favorite site on tour, your love and enthusiasm for it become contagious. Your ability to stay positive and be calm under pressure build your professional reputation. I struggle with that part. I have the world's worst poker face. So I've started making points of telling my travelers, don't worry, I stress so that you don't have to. And hopefully that reclaims, some of the grace under fire. So what kind of grace under fire are we talking about? How about something Marianne alluded to earlier? How about you giving a tour in a city where you've never lived? My first Washington, D.C. tour was a disaster. I turned the wrong way looking for the tomb of the unknown soldier. And if I'd been with first-time teachers, I would have gotten away with it. I could have faked it. I could say, ta-da, pictures. Now we'll go to the tomb. But no, I had these really well-traveled, well-experienced teachers who knew what I'd done. I'm like, I'm sorry, he was unknown. It was the best I had, but that's the kind of mistake you make once. So these are growing pains you will encounter. Embrace them. So similarly, when it comes to those cities where you've never lived in them, just like doing the interviews, do your homework. Read. Get to know those cities as well as you can before you set foot in them. I love to read. I also love watching documentaries and travel videos, getting good visuals on the places we'll be seeing. And take tours. Take tours with all the local tour guides that you have now met and become friends with at those conferences. One of my favorite things also is when I arrive in a city the day before a tour, I try to get there as early as possible and spend the whole pre-day in town, including walking any tour routes that I might not be 100% certain of or comfortable with. That way, when the proverbial curtain goes up, that's my theater background, nobody is any the wiser. So that company that I never interviewed with but worked anyway is called Cruiseco UK, and they asked me last year if I was available for a Boston tour in July, and I said yes. But I warned them, I've only ever done Boston with school groups, and while I was handling the TD logistics, we always had a local step-on providing the content. And they told me, well, you'd be on your own for this one. I said, okay, I mean, if you trust me to do the homework, I'll do it. I said, we trust you. So I start, hunkering down to get to know Boston a little bit better. And like Philadelphia, Boston leans into its, American Revolution history very much, rah, rah, we're an American Revolution city. And I'm here thinking, all of my travelers are Brits. I'm going to make enemies everywhere. So I did extra research on other topics just to make sure I had some stuff to bond with my Brits over. And the whole thing went so much better than I'd feared and than I'd expected that by the time the tour was over, I decided that I could now, in good conscience, market myself as a Boston guide and TD. And I do. So for all of this, I know I'm coming up to the end of my 10 minutes. Bear in mind, I approach this webinar and frankly everything else in my life as a storyteller, but one of those key differences between guiding and directing is that tour directors are expected to embrace the logistics first and the storytelling and the fun stuff second. Knowing whether the restrooms are open at the FDR Memorial is more important to a TD than knowing the story of the disabled community's reaction to the first statue that was unveiled at that site. That's tour guide stuff. The restrooms are the TD stuff. This is, a bit of an oversimplification, but that's what it boils down to. Last bit of advice before I yield to, I think, Pam. If you're going to embrace this industry and this profession, be ready to embrace that life that comes with it. I love the fact that I live so much of my life on the road, that I'm not sleeping at home every night. Not everyone does. You want to be honest with yourself about what you like and about what you want. And you want to be okay with what you need to give up in order to have that. Every year, at least twice during the year, I sit down with my wife and I ask, are we okay with this? Are we okay with my being away as often as I am and for as long as I am? So far, she seems happy to be rid of me. But the year could come when that changes. You want to be ready for that, but also be ready for the ride. It's a lot of fun. That's all I got.
Cool, thank you. You ready to go, Pam?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Pam. I have been doing this 37, 38 years, something like that. And I started when I was in my 20s. And so you can do the math there. I had also had a theater background. I had traveled around the world with a theater company and called Up With People. Some of you might remember it. And in that, it was like a three-part thing. We lived with host families everywhere. We didn't stay in hotels. We did community service, and we did this show that was very benign. We are many, we are one type of thing. I had 110 people in my cast from 16 countries. And those are the only 110 faces that were the same all year long. And so at the end of that year, I was really burnt out from doing the same show 180 times. But I really liked waking up in new places. I love history. My father was a history teacher. He took us camping up and down the East Coast, every historic site. And for me, history were stories because I could always picture where they happened when I was in school because I had been to a lot of those places. And so I came back from that year and I thought, well, maybe I'll do something in travel. And I had 3 interviews that I set up, and I wasn't looking for a job, which actually opens you up to a lot more opportunities, believe it or not. I called people I knew who worked in the travel industry. I had called a travel placement company. I called a travel agent at the time and a small tour company. And all of them, they said, well, you should be a tour director. And I'm like, well, what's that? And from that, I saw an advertisement for a school. I went and took the class at the school. At the time, the school was a month-long class. And at the end of that class, I did a series of interviews with a few different tour companies, and I sent my resume out to a ton of tour companies, and I got hired by Tauk. and I did my first year of tour directing with Tauk. They wanted to keep me, but I decided, and they were a great company. I did Salt Lake, Yellowstone, Tetons, Mount Rushmore, not a single day off, northbound, southbound, for 4.5 months. And I decided that is not what I wanted to do. I got into this business because I wanted to do various tours. And at the time, that particular company wanted you to commit to doing 2 years of the same tour, and then maybe they'd send you someplace else. So I had done that for them and fall foliage for them. And I decided I wanted to go freelance. You can be an employee or an independent contractor. In my eyes, there's really not much difference because I work for multiple companies. Some people choose to work for one company, and you get some benefits from that. Sometimes you get health insurance or other things. I paid my own health insurance because for me, I like the freedom of having my own schedule. So most companies I worked for over the years, and I've worked for a lot of them, I have narrowed that down. I'm getting a little older. I've narrowed that down to really three main companies that I work for. One's a small company that deals with preform groups in the Midwest. The other one is a larger company that deals mostly with preform groups, but some individual travel. And the other company is a student company, and I've worked for lots of those over the years as well. And they do mostly student performing groups. So that is kind of how I got in. But in the beginning, I would tell everybody, take anything and build that resume. And then if you go to a conference like IATDG's Tour Connect, which I love that conference, I don't even interview at that conference because I don't have to at this stage in my career. But I go because of the continuing education, the networking with friends, and a lot of the jobs I've been offered over the years are not companies that I've even interviewed with. They're just people I met at those conferences who said, I would really love to have you come work for me. So there's a lot of opportunities that way. Take everything in the beginning. So I have done every aspect of this business. I was a local guide in Los Angeles, and that is a big city to be a local guide in. Minimum city tour is 4 hours to 6 hours, right? I did that for years. I trained people at the school that I went to. I would teach at the school that I went to for 15 plus years. I mentored tons of people over the years with tour companies I worked with. And then from that school, when they would have people call me and say, give them the pros and the cons of this industry, and I would do that. I worked meeting and event planning, which is also an over-the-road work that's related to our job field, where you go and you help work conferences for big multinational corporations in different places around the world. I've done cruise hosting. I've done train hosting. I've done student tours, adult tours, all different varieties of tours. And I love the lifestyle. I have tried other things in the wintertime. I would do other things in LA. Tour directing always brought me back, and that's been my solid. I have lots of friends in the industry. They understand my lifestyle. A lot of my friends off the road don't really understand my lifestyle as much. And that's okay. I'm very lucky. I've been doing this for a long time. I get year-round work. Most of the time, when you start out in this industry, you have about 4 months in the winter where it's kind of dead time. And I managed to get 1 or 2 tours each of those 4 months. So I work year round. Wasn't that way in the beginning. So it can vary. But my love of this job, I still do local guiding every once in a while. I spend 4 months in the winter in LA. I still do some local guiding there. I do some local guiding on Cape Cod every so often, but I don't have a lot of time to do that full time anymore because I'm usually on the road. And I get my schedule pretty much by the end of July. I know what I'm doing for the full year the following year. Things can change. Maybe a tour doesn't make the numbers it should to operate. And so I will open that up to tour companies. They'll give me plenty of notice, usually 3 months notice, and say it's not going to happen. I'll try to fill it with another company, or that company will try to fill it with something else. So I know my schedule way far in advance. I have been to over 55 plus countries. I haven't counted them in a few years, but 55 plus. And I have had some adventures of a lifetime doing that. Like others have said, you're doing the logistics, but you're also just as responsible for the commentary in between. And I've worked for companies where they expect you to do commentary in cities that I've never been to, small cities. So oftentimes on my own dime, I'll ask to fly in a few days early. They pay for the airfare. I pay for the few days early, hotel and whatever, and I write that off and I do the research and I go into those places. So as Matthew said, I don't show up and not know where the bathrooms are, which is the most important thing on a tour, right? And I have the logistics and I know where I'm walking. So there's some of that. Other companies provide you more with more guides, but just some of the things I've done. I've been in Africa. I've ridden elephants. I have swam with sea turtles in the Galapagos multiple times. I have seen every kind of animal you can see in Yellowstone. I have just had world events. I've been to Oktoberfest in Munich like 5 times for work, got paid to be there and drink my beer. I have done Oberammergau numerous times now, a couple decades worth of Oberammergau. I have done Rose Parade. I can't even tell you how many times. So many different events, Balloon Fiesta, you name it. I got to do the tattoo in Edinburgh Castle last year, which was on my bucket list. So I'm very lucky. I spend about 60-40, usually 60% of my time abroad on tours and 40% here in the States. In the last few years, I have switched that up because I just feel like that more tours are going domestically right now than internationally, just because of world events that are going on. People feel safer, I think, sometimes traveling at home. So I am still doing some international tours, but I'm doing more domestic this year. And I took more domestic last year just because I thought I would make more money that way. Most of our money is tips, just like local guiding. And so I wanted to make sure that I had myself covered for that, just in case world events went awry. So, but I have enjoyed it immensely. And I say, do everything, get anything on your resume you can. And then when you go to a conference like IATDG, you have that much more ahead of everybody else just by having a few things of experience on your resume. And the fact that you have local guided will really help you. You're not starting out at the same point as a lot of people are. You understand about presenting. You understand about logistics, and I have an appointment and I have to be at this museum by this time. So you have a lot of things that are going to put you steps ahead of, quote, a newbie. So I can't recommend it enough. Like everybody said, it's not for everybody's lifestyle. I work 12 to 14-hour days, sometimes 14 to 16-hour days. And then I'm studying at night. I tell everybody it's like taking a history final every night. I'm making phone calls and reconfirming things all the time. But if you love that, if you love being around people, I always tell people, these are the pros. Most people are happy. They're on vacation. They paid to be there. They want to have a good time. And in the bad event that you have somebody who's just a real pill, who just is making your life miserable, you only have to see them for a week or two. And then you never have to see them again, unlike going to that cubicle at work where you have to sit next to that person, right? So I say it's the best job ever. And I even post that on my pictures sometimes. I'll say, best period, job period, ever period. And I'm still saying that after 37, 38 years. So a little bit about my background and what this career has done for me.
Thanks, Pam. And Steve, are you ready to go?
Unmute, and you're going to share or make me a co-host again.
I need me to do it again. Hold on. Yeah, it says you're still a co-host. Are you not able to share?
Oh, wait, there I am. Boom.
There we go.
Can you guys see me?
Yes, that's good.
Yep.
Cool. Hey, everybody, my name is Steve. So before I go, because tour directors, tour guides know that time is of the essence. I am not accidentally going over my time. I have permission. I just want to point that out. I'm actually going to be talking on the opposite spectrum of these three fine people that just talked. My first year as a tour director. Can you imagine that? That is 2026. So I don't have multi-years in this. The first question you got to ask yourself, how did I decide, or how do you decide to get into this industry? You can read, I'm not going to read everything, but that's me in Germany, because I was in Germany for 21 days. I was getting ready to start a 10-day tour with Gate 1 with my wife. And we had some downtime, and I'm talking with the tour manager, tour director. We have many labels for the same thing. And I became friends with her. Her name is Pebbles. If anybody knows her in the industry, she works year round. We became friends, and halfway through our conversation, she says, "You're retired? You need to be a tour director." I looked at my wife, I looked back at her, and I said, okay. And that is how I decided to actually get into this industry, just like that. Okay, becoming a tour director. So as soon as I got back from Germany, I started researching programs, IATDG, Trip School. There were a couple others. I decided to go with Trip School because of the culture. It's a little bit different than some of the other ones, but I immediately signed up for the online course, how to become a tour director. It took me 3 weeks because I was still doing a little bit of travel. You could probably finish it in 2 weeks if you hit it hard. Lots of quizzes. After that, you need to go to an actual site if you want to become a certified TD. All the organizations basically operate this way. Trip School has 4 trainings a year, and look at the one I picked, Philadelphia, and that's how I met my friend, Marianne. So I signed up for July right after taking my online class. It's about 7 days. You get local tour guides and tour operators speaking, a lot of classroom time, and then you're out on the streets, basically being thrown commentary. They purposely want you under stress to see how you operate, because it's time. You can screw up as much as you want during training, but as Matthew, the performer here, you're a performer as well as everything else once you're on tour. So after you finish all that stuff, what happens next? You got your money involved in it, you need a job, getting hired. Interviews were actually set up of our last day in Philadelphia. And not to skip ahead, but you also do motor coach training while you're getting trained to be a tour director, because motor coaches can be a little intimidating. So our instructor lined up 3 interviews, and I ended up getting hired before I finished class. So I had my first offer at the end of the day. If you see Susie in the middle of that picture, she held out. She didn't want to do student tours, and took her 4 months after graduating. And guess what? That woman has been working in England all summer long. It does help that she's got an English accent. And then you've got Michelle on the left, who is was a professional musician, teacher. She's been doing performance tours all summer long. So you can go to work almost immediately. It really depends on what you're looking at doing. Training just begins. And no, we're not in training in this funny picture. We were at TripCon last November, and those are some of the students that I graduated with. Now, I focused on East Coast because your first gig as a new guy or girl will be DC, New York, and Boston. So I studied. What did I study? I bought books. specifically for commentary. And then what else did I do? I studied 4 to 5 days a week for probably an hour and a half a day, sometimes 2 hours, because I had to be ready in March, because that's where the tours start. City commentary, paperbacks, all that good stuff. Then I use YouTube and the History Channel. I do 3.5 mile walks on my off days of working out. And I put my headset in, and History Channel, YouTube, local tour guides, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, you name it. And I'm listening for about an hour and a half. Then I notate into a program called Notion. Picture Evernote, but on steroids. And you can actually have that when you're on tour with little bullet points to help you out if you forgot something, right? You're on the bus, you can look down at your phone and look at your notes. After that, what happens next for anybody that wants to get into this? Company training. Before you go on tour, most companies are going to want you to train. They'll fly you in, they'll pay for your food, they'll pay for the hotel, and it'll be maybe 4 days. Company policies, you'll do walking tours with locals, you'll learn some good insights, and then you'll do a ride along, usually a month before your tour. Now, I also signed up and did mega training through Trip School, which is basically secondary training. Tour operators love that on your resume. That is 10 days split up between DC, Boston, and New York. Unfortunately, they didn't have Philadelphia in there. So, my first solo tour. That guy on the top right, his name is Steve also. He was my ride-along instructor. Being on a bus for 3 or 4 days before your own is so helpful because you really get the feel of it. You get the flow before you're by yourself. And what is being by yourself? Well, simply put, I started off in DC to New York, my first 5-day tour this year. It was March. I had 52 people waiting for me at the airport, and I'm by myself. So you have to fake it till you make it. And remember, chaos is king. Once you embrace chaos, you'll be fine. Group leaders run the school. There could be 3 or 4 schools in one bus, or some tour operators prefer one. I had 3 schools on my bus, 52 people, and a couple of chaperones. Chaperones are supposed to be there to help. They're basically there for holiday. You'll find that out. They're not very helpful for the most part. Nothing bad, but that's just how it is. You'll be rounding them up. They're not on the bus. They're in a bar getting a drink. I mean, it's amazing. So the logistics for these tours, as our other TDs have mentioned, are on you. You have to basically reconfirm hotels, room counts, restaurants, ticketed events. Your first tour is going to be a cluster, but by your 4th or 5th tour, you feel comfortable being uncomfortable. You really do. Keeping 52 people together in Times Square, I swear, it's not that difficult. You use chaperones, the beginning, the middle, and at the end, you're absolutely fine. You're going to get so comfortable in this. The other thing is you don't have to worry about the buses. The buses aren't there to drive you around through these cities. You're basically off bus as much as possible, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. So my first tour, 3 perfect scores. They commented that I must have been doing this for 8 to 10 years. Guys, this was my first tour. I made wine and I was a chef, just saying. Tips and tricks. Any of you guys that have worked Arlington know Johnny Clem, maybe? If you don't, look him up. It'll be the story that you're going to want to share with all your student tours. He is incredible. So I suggest getting licensed in your cities. This is if you become a tour director. Why? Well, some tour operators pay if they don't need to bring a step-on. Nothing against you Phillies. You're all step-ons down there. But we're talking about DC, Boston, and New York. In DC, you pay your $100 and your license. You don't have to do anything. Don't get it until January because it expires every year. There's no carryover. So most tour operators don't want to hire step-ons because they're really hard to find during season. So they require you to get your license. It's just a couple bucks, $100. And you may be getting paid extra money for up to 2 step-ons in DC, usually 1. New York City's different. My tour operator said, don't get your license in New York until your 2nd year. Don't worry about it. If you know Steve Norkus, I'm a crazy guy. I actually went downtown and took the exam while I was still in training using the New York Study Guide. This, if you study it, you'll pass the test. I got an 86%. And when my first tour started, I called up the tour operator and I said, I'm licensed in New York. It's not necessary. And I made really good bonus money handling the 2 step-on guides, doing it myself. It'll be something like Financial District, which will be, a couple hours because they're 2 hours. And then maybe the 9/11, which is going to be the memorial, the museum, and all that tragic stuff. So get your licenses if you feel comfortable, not required in Boston. Let your driver own the routes. They typically know what they're doing, so you don't have to really jump on top of them much. Some of them can be pretty bad, but I had great experiences. Remember, you're going to stay off the bus as much as possible. Boston has 9 or 10 stops in the entire city for motor coaches, and 8 out of 10 of them aren't even in the historic district. So you get dropped off and it's boots to the ground, and that's what you want. You don't want to be on a bus. You're on a bus when you're leaving DC going to New York. When you're in DC, you may do a bus to the Jefferson because it's kind of far, Jefferson Memorial, and maybe be dropped off somewhere else, but evening tour, the big 3. But in general, you are on your own walking. You stay off the bus when you can. New York, and I know Matt, if he's from New York, knows this. Once you get out of Pier 83, it's the ferry to Statue of Liberty. You hop on the bus in the parking lot. They drop you off in South Manhattan. And guess what happens? You say goodbye. And you work your way all the way up to eventually your Broadway show that evening. You're taking a subway if you're comfortable, which you will be. And then remember, you're going from south all the way up, not all the way, but to Broadway. And at 9:30 at night, your bus is picking you up to take you back to the hotel. So don't worry about the bus. The bus is there to get you to those distances that aren't convenient. You can navigate invisibly. If you have an Apple Watch and Apple Maps, not Google Maps, and you're confused about the cities, guess what? You just type in the directions and your watch taps your wrist. You don't stand there looking at your phone like an amateur. It's really cool. Practice your commentary out loud. I actually worked on my commentary during my walks. I would do an hour of talking to myself about the Washington Monument and the delays of building it, or the Capitol. That's a good one. Certify now and go to the conferences. So I may be a trip school person, but I'm also a member of IATDG because I found that group to be incredibly kind, and they've got awesome seminars and classes at their conference. I went all in. If you do not get certified now, before November, you won't be working till 2028. Typically, let me explain. I've got 4 minutes. Certifications you want to get before November, because if you go to the conference, IATDG in Vegas, TripCon in Louisville, they're back to back. You can go to both, and there will be 30 to 50 tour operators interviewing people over 2 days. So if you're looking for work, that's a place to go. But if you go and say, oh, I'm not certified, I'm not a TD yet, they're not going to hire you. But if you get everything under your belt before November, you have a better chance of getting an offer shortly after. The other thing, if you're not certified this year, guess what? Tours are offered by tour operators starting next month, September. And they'll offer up until January. We're talking about historically. There are other instances for adult tours later in the year. But as a new TD, you're going to be doing students. So you need to look online to any of the organizations and getting certified sooner than possible if you want to work next year. It can be costly, but it really depends on the investment and how much you want to work. Because I just did my first season, and obviously I love it. I'm also semi-retired. Now, if you're wondering, well, he worked for one tour operator. Last week, I just signed a contract with the second tour operator. She hunted me down and said she saw me at the 1-minute interviews at ATDG, AATDG. It's better just to say you guys. And she said, I remember you from the 1-minute interview. And that's when you're talking in front of 7 TOs, 1 minute, a total of 40 of them in 7 minutes. Talk about stress. And I took the contract, and in my contract, it states that I must be willing to work a minimum of 10 tours for 2027. Not only is the money good, but I'm looking at doing about 18 to 20 tours next year. So you can do that too. It's just a matter of time. Last but not least, hey, I'm right on time. Pay it forward. These people you're talking to that talked, that are in the association, everybody wants to help everybody. I've had so much support and help through networking at these conferences and studying and training. I may not have all the experience that these folks have. Certainly reach out to them. But if you want to call, text, or email me, I can help you out any way I can and give you the ins and outs of how not to spend so much money on this. Because your first year, you want to go all in. I'm ending that now, and I really appreciate everybody's time and everybody's presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Before we open up to questions, do you want to just say a little bit about IATDG, Elaine? Just so people know kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, thanks. So again, our members are tour operators, tour directors, tour guides, and the tour operators who hire them. So one of the things that one of the ways that we put you all together, there's a few different ways, but one of them is we have an international database that I'm going to share my screen again, just a second. And it would be nice if I just started this presentation. Okay. And I'm not even on the right screen. All right. So we have an international database that is for tour directors and tour guides to create a profile, and tour operators can search when they are looking to hire a local guide, or they're looking to hire a tour director. They can search based on location, they can search based on language, they can search based on, passport or what have you. And while yes, there is a paid membership, we'd love everybody to become a member. It is also free to create. There is a complimentary account, and with that complimentary account, you are also on this database. It's not an enhanced profile, like it doesn't have your picture or resume, but you can put a good amount of your work history there. So this is one way that tour operators can find you without you having to put any work in. I just had a conversation a few weeks ago with tour director manager at Road Scholar, who didn't even bother putting out a job alert. She just looked on our database and she hired somebody for one of her tours. So this is a way to get work to come to you. So again, that works with the complimentary account as well. And the way to register for that is you go to our website, iatdg.org. You go to membership, you see here on the top right, and then you choose which of these you most align with. But you can say tour director and also tour guide, or tour director and also a local guide, etc. Also, if you have a profile, you are automatically placed on our job alerts list. And on that job alerts list, if a tour operator is looking for a local guide in Philadelphia or a tour director in Philadelphia, et cetera, then that job alert goes out and you will be able to apply for that open position. So these are some of the ways that we help. We're here to help you all get work. So I encourage you all to be discoverable, create an account so that tour operators can find you. And since lots of you have already mentioned Tour Connect, it wasn't even my plan, but I might as well just put this up there. Tour Connect is our yearly conference this year. It's November 8th to the 12th in Las Vegas. It's our 10-year anniversary. We are going to party hardy. And it's going to be a great time. And if you have any questions you want to ask about IATDG, I am here for you. These are where you can reach me. info@iatdg.org and Elaine@iatdg.org. All right.
And you want to say a word, Elaine? I think I've been posting in our newsletter that you have a tour director training coming up at the end of August.
We do.
Right?
Well, thank you very much, Marianne. So we do have a tour directing school as well. It's called Tour Prep. It starts starts on Monday. Monday is our orientation. And then the way our program works is that it's actually 8 weeks. It's asynchronous. So every week there's a new module that opens up for you. And every weekend, there's a one live class every weekend with a live instructor that's going to go through everything that you learned that week, answer any questions, this is where your quizzes are, etc. And you also create this really lovely cohort. So that goes for 8 weeks. And then at the end of those 8 weeks, then you have a practicum, which is really what Steve was talking about. You have classroom time, you've got motor coach time, it's also a FAM. And for the August cohort, the practicum leads right into Tour Connect. So you would be newly minted certified tour director and go right into interviewing with tour operators. So that you can also find information for that on our website, which again is iatdg.org. I can't even say it, iatdg.org. I do want to just very quickly say one quick thing, something Steve said, if you don't get certified, you won't get work until the next year. And I have to disagree with that, Steve, because
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I have been, so this is my first year as executive director, but I've been a member since 2016. And while I am certified, I have seen over and over and over again people who come in and who aren't even tour guides. Maybe they're a travel agent, maybe they just have a lot of customer service experience and they have just this X factor, right? And they get hired and they have a schedule for the very next year coming up in a few months, right? And
I've never been certified.
Oh, Matt, there you go. Matt Baker's never been certified.
If I didn't attend a single class, I'm certifiable, but I'm not certified.
I mean, that is absolutely true. He is certifiable, but he is not certified. So, but also you are all tour guides, right? And so like Pam said, you know what this job is. You know what the gig is. You understand groups. You understand how to entertain and how to inform and all the things, logistics and all of that. I don't see not being certified being a problem from getting work for the next year. So I don't want you to think, oh, I'm not certified, and that discourages you from coming. If you are interested, I mean, certainly tour guides go there and they get work there as well. But if you're interested in going into tour directing and you go to Tour Connect, you can interview as a tour director as well. So there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Marianne.
And I would also say, I went to the IATDG conference last year, and I went through the whole interview process, not really wanting more work, but just to sort of know what it was like so I could tell our members about it. And I would just tell people right up, like, look, I only do Philly. I only do Philly. And I got some extra work in Philly. So, I mean, you can be sort of a tour director in one city too. It's not as much work. I mean, if you're open to multi-cities, there's a lot more possibility for work, but it is possible to just be just stay in Philadelphia and still get more work. But that being said, let's open it up to questions. So we have a question in the chat from Michael. This is a great presentation and we feel the passion. One question I would have, how much does a tour guide make or tour director make at the beginning? How do you negotiate your compensation?
Thank you, Marianne.
So I can actually take this, and believe it or not, I actually have a slide because because I actually do a presentation for people who are who are interested in becoming tour directors. And I will say that for most tour operators, I'm not going to say it's all of them, but for most tour operators, it doesn't necessarily matter what how far along you are in your career. A lot of times they will just their rate is their rate, right? So this is how much they pay tour directors. Not all, but most of the ones that I have worked for have worked this way. But there is, let's say, a formula when it comes to tour director pay, and it is daily rate plus tips equals TD pay. So the average daily rate is $200 to $500 per day. If you are on the higher end of that, you are working most likely for a student tour operator, because for the most part, student tour operators do not provide tips. Some do. Again, nothing I'm saying is going to apply to all tour operators, right? But I've seen for student tour operators, $500 a day, $600 a day. And it's because they're supplementing the fact that you're not making any tips, so they're paying you a higher daily rate. And if they're paying you tips on top of that, that's great. If you're on the lower end, 200, you're almost certainly getting tips. And even if you're right there in the middle, you're most certainly getting tips. So the tips are the average recommended rate is $7 to $10 per passenger per day. What does that mean? When a guest registers for a tour with the tour operator, they're going to receive some sort of document, right? It's going to tell them what to wear, what the weather's going to be like, what to pack, all of this kind of stuff. And one of those pages is going to say what they recommend that you tip the tour director, the motor coach driver, and any local guides that are on the tour. And the average recommended rate is $7 to $10 per passenger per day, average. So let's use an example. If you have a 7-day tour with 40 passengers, and let's say your daily rate is $250 per day, and recommended rate tips is $7 per passenger per day. $250 a day times 7 days is $1,750. Am I going in and out? I know my picture is, but can you hear me? Okay. For the tips, 40 passengers times $7 times 7 days is $1,960. So $1,750 daily rate, $1,960 tips. For the 7-day tour, you're getting paid $3,710. So this is an example of what TD pay can look like. It can be a lot more. I worked for a luxury company that the daily rate, and this was years ago, it was like 2016, but the daily rate was $400 or $425 a day, and the tips were $15 a day. It was very, I came home with a lot of money. And then I've worked for some tour operators who paid much less than that, right? But this is the average of what you can expect nowadays as a tour director. And again, you are even as a new tour director, many times it's just they just have a rate for everybody.
May I piggyback on that for a moment? First of all, that was very clear. I was like some of the best communicated pay rates I've seen. With all of that in mind, I do mostly school groups. I work for a couple of adult companies, but by and large, kids are my bread and butter. And I personally love that. But I mentioned this because their tours tend to be a bit shorter. The average school group that I work with is 4 days. That means I get to do more of them during the busiest times, but still, per tour, you're dealing in smaller chunks of time. On the flip side, and Pam, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. Lately, as she said, often because of what's happening in the world right now, adult groups, the numbers are down. A lot of people I know, a lot of friends of mine have been complaining about, buses going out with 30 people on board instead of 50 people on board, which when you're depending that much on tips can affect your bottom line in ways that when you work with school groups, it does not. So there's pros and cons, and it's not cut and dry. There's a lot going on that affects this very good question.
Yeah, I had recently, I had a conversation with another person who's been in the industry a long time, very seasoned person with me. And we both work for this student company who pays extremely well. One of the reasons why student companies pay extremely well is because years ago, this particular student company came up to me at a conference and they said, what can we do to retain people? Every time the adult season comes, all these people that have promised to do tours for us dump us. What can we do? We said, pay better. And so they did. They started paying higher rates, and some of those even include some tips that the groups have prepaid, and then they added into your salary at the end. One of those companies I'm making over $400 a day for, plus tips. So student tours are shorter. Days can be longer. You're doing less commentary typically because you're trying to keep them involved, and you're asking things in forms of questions, and kids' attention span isn't quite the same as adults sometimes, but the days can be longer because the whole idea is you get them exhausted. That's why you're doing all the memorials at night in DC, right? You're getting them exhausted so they actually sleep at the hotel and don't cause problems at the hotel, right? So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. But, I'm not studying every nook and cranny like I would. I still have to know, the basic facts about places, but it's a little bit of a less deal that way, but days can be longer, right? So the salary is really based, and it's different for every company. I have another company that pays everybody the same, and I've worked for them for over 20 years. And it's kind of a bone of contention with some of us. We're not pleased that they do that. But for them, it's just easier to just pay everybody this rate. Now, the rate has gone up over the years, but still. I have others that pay us on a different scale, that it depends on how many years I've been with them and what my ratings come in as, because you're evaluated on all your tours. And so it's a combination of those two things that pay as well. So it's a little different, and you can't say across the board you're going to make this much. You're not. I also get paid. This is something Elaine didn't mention, but I'm sure it figures into her thing. You get per diems on things. So if I have meals that are not included, we call those scatter lunches or scatter dinners. The companies will give me a certain amount towards that meal. Maybe it's $25 a dinner. And sometimes I have to show the receipt for that meal I bought. Sometimes they just give me that 25 bucks and that's money that's given to me. Now, if I don't spend that, I pocket that money, right? I don't have to return it if they're going to give me a certain amount per meal that's not included with the trip because the group has it on their own. So there's money for per diem. I get money for per diem from one company for cell phone usage. They don't give me much. They give me $5 a day or something, but it's something, right? So that all contributes into some of the money that you're making as well. When I'm on the road, my money makes more money for me. If some of my friends saw what I made on paper, they might think I was a pauper, right? But a lot of my money is tips. A lot of my money is when I'm on the road, I'm not paying for gas. My bills at home are a lot cheaper because I'm not there. My meals are all taken care of when I'm on tour. So I'm not spending that money. When I have a regular 9 to 5 job, I'm spending a lot more money to go in and out to work for my gas, for my lunch and my dinners, for, I'm using more utilities at home. So my money goes a lot further than it does for a lot of people. So
Is your understanding of the cost of living?
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm not paying that when I'm on the road, everything's taken care of. So everything I make, literally everything I make is gravy. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes,
You have other
absolutely.
questions?
For that advice of pay better, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No worries. No worries.
Nobody else has any questions?
Even though I love doing my adult tours, I was talking about my friend this year, and I said, you know, my student company, she's paying me a lot more, and she's sending me to Hawaii to do tours, and she's sending me to New York City for the Carnegie Hall programs. And, you know, she's giving me great tours. They're shorter. I'm going to say yes to those that are paying me a lot more for a quicker amount of time in places I want to be than my adult tours. I'm considering taking those as more affirmative than with some of my adult tours. So I split my time between all of them, but it really varies. And the student tours pay pretty well, and it's a quicker turnaround.
Great when you get to hear the kids in your group play at Carnegie Hall. I mean, Carnegie Hall is just wonderful anyway, of course. It's Carnegie Hall. But I mean, I've seen performances from kids in my group that I'm like, my God, I've heard professional orchestras that weren't as good. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it's amazing. It's a funny thing. I want to share that, you know, the first IATDG conference I ever attended was the first time they were in Las Vegas, which I think was like their third ever. And I was truly dipping my toes into the director world. I was still very, very much a local guide. And so a lot of what I was hearing, just what I heard in conversation and what I eavesdropped on from my colleagues, it was amazing to me personally, just how many people don't want to work with kids. They're like, oh, I'll do student tours if I have to as a stepping stone, but really that's just to get to the adult groups. And I was there like, I'll take your kids. I love kids. I love working with kids. And I freely admit that part of that is the ego boost that comes from at the end of a tour that I did, you know, at the end of the stuff that I showed you, if one kid, and I only need one, says, when I graduate, this is where I'm coming to live, then I've done my job, you know?
And I find I like doing, I would never give up my student tours. I would never give up my adult tours. I love doing the student tours. And people say, well, what's easier? Neither is easier. I mean, they're same amount of work, just different kinds of work. With adults, they go to their
Different
room.
problems.
Yeah, different problems. If my adults are out past 10 o'clock at night, more power to them. If my kids are, there's an issue, right? So, you know, kids don't complain. They sleep 2 to a bed, 4 to a room, usually on most student tours. Adults, you know, the pillows aren't right or whatever. So it's, you know, it's different issues and different complaints. But for the most part, you know, even the kids, they're so happy to be there. Some of them, it's their first time having any sort of freedom and being away from home and being with their friends. And it's exciting. I feed off that energy from the kids. And then when it's time to do the adult tours, I'm happy to do my adult tours too, you know? So, I mean, I wouldn't say one's better than the other, just different.
When there's a problem on a student tour, the problem is usually the adults.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is chaperones who don't understand that chaperone is a verb.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you do and you're not just along for the ride. Happily, I mean, I've seen it happen. I know what he's saying. He's not wrong. But happily, it doesn't happen too terribly often with me. Maybe now that I've said that, I've jinxed it, and next year will be a nightmare. But you know, it doesn't.
And a lot of companies these days do have guidelines for chaperones that chaperones have to sign off on. Not every company does that, but a lot of them do. Like you can't drink while you're on a student tour.
Yeah, he mentioned they're at the bar drinking, and my first thought was, how many contractual obligations did that violate?
Yeah,
which again does not mean it doesn't happen.
It does. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, most of the time it's okay. He is right. The people you get the most problems with are, I would rather have a bus full of kids and like 2 teachers than a chaperone for every 10 kid, you know? But but that's not your choice. You just do with what you have. And a lot of schools have that policy because in their minds, schools think that's actually better. It's more eyes on the kids to have 1 for every 10. In reality, those of us who do the job can tell you, oh no.
But if it turns out that way, they're right. But how often does it turn out that way?
So
Here
Andrew
I think
has a question.
Yeah, Andrew has a question. Go ahead, Andy.
I have a question. So I've been doing this for a year, right? And I'm going to try to, one of the reasons I came on this is now I'm going to try to expand my career. So I almost want to get some corporate clients. So like I have a list of like what they call these destination management companies and
Yep.
everything. And I was actually
DMCs.
yeah. So one of the things I came on, he was trying to figure out what to call myself, like a tour guide, you know what I'm saying?
It really depends on what you're doing. So, I mean,
So if I
in
want to,
this
sorry, I didn't mean to cut
profession, I've been a tour guide, which is usually local guide, right? I've been a tour director, tour manager, trip leader, which is typically a student designation, travel director. And basically those last four are kind of all the same. It's just different terminology. So if my business card says I'm a tour director, but even if a company hires me and they call us tour managers, they don't care. They know that that's the same thing.
Right. So like to me now, after this, I'm going to call myself a tour guide. I'm never leaving Philly. I love it here.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Go to
also
bed at
have,
night every night on your tours.
yes, I also have access to things. Restaurants, I have access to the top of City Hall here in Philly. I have access to other things, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is if I'm going to call one of these, this is not for everybody here, but call one of these destination management companies and say, not only do I do great tours, but I have access to things that most other people do not. Like, who would I call? Like, is there a person at all these companies you're talking about? They're like, what would you do if you were me? Is my question. Right?
First of all, the answer to the question of what do you call yourself, you definitely, with what you just described, you definitely sound like a guide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that sounds like almost the perfect definition of a tour guide.
Okay.
But if you wanted to work like a destination management company or incentive companies, those are people that go to a certain city and you work on a team with them. And then you would be probably a travel director or a destination management contact.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you. And who would you call at those companies? Like who? So if I bring up their website, there's 15. Some people are called. Some of them seem to have actual tour directors on staff, but I don't want to work for them directly, right? I want to be my own thing.
Well, yes and no. I mean, you know, we always have someone we answer to on tour. In fact, that was, you know, the situation that Steve described, you know, when he's got, you know, what we call a consolidated tour with the 3 schools on one bus and 3 separate directors. I do those every once in a while. It's my least favorite kind of gig because I always like having one person that I answer to. You know, the one person I can, you know, look and say, you know, I want to make everyone happy, but failing that, I want to make you happy. And you know, you're going to have that, you know, that person is your client. Yes, you are self-employed. Yes, you are your own tour company. But for every tour you do, you know, these DMCs are going to be your client. So, I mean, I usually would say the tour operator is the person you talk to, but you know, anyone who does, you know, fewer middlemen than I do, feel free to correct me.
I got it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I just want to say one thing that maybe none of us mentioned is, well, gratification is gratification, but there's different forms of gratification, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I get more out of these trips than the students themselves. And sometimes I remember I'd been to the Capitol many times. After you do enough of them, you're looking to do something else when they're doing their little private tour. So I hang out at the Library of Congress now. And when you're standing upstairs looking down, I had tears in my eyes because I was so proud that I am representing Washington, D.C. in this moment. And that is what continues to drive me and gives me the excitement that I've picked the right gig to do. And this happens everywhere. When you're in New York, Boston, I mean, my gosh, it's incredible. So I just wanted to point out that the gratification that I get from leading these tours are just so much more than money. It really is.
Yes, yes, and yes. You are so right. By the way, welcome to the club, and congratulations on your first year. because you are so new, you have not had this happen yet, but you will, and you're going to love it, where you'll be walking on a crowded street and all of a sudden someone will be like, hey, you were my tour guide however many years ago, and you will not recognize them because of course you will have seen a few hundred people since then, but you're like, hey, I probably was, good to see you. A good friend of mine, someone who's been at it longer than I have, recently had it happen where he's been at it so long, a chaperone, I don't remember if the chaperone was a parent or a teacher, but a chaperone on a tour that he did last year had been a student on a tour he had done like 15 years earlier. And he's like, oh my God, we love you. I'm so glad I've got you again. It was, yes.
That's happened to me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden,
yes,
back
it
as
makes you
teacher's
feel old.
assistant, and then they're the band director, and then and I had them as a student at one point.
Absolutely, and that they remember you. That and the sad part about that is that unless it's a moment like that, we never get to know just how much we may have touched someone. But every once in a while, something happens that makes you realize, yeah, the attention span might not have seemed like much, but it turns out I wasn't talking into the air. Somebody really got something. And you're right. That's the best part. I mean, money is money. Anyone who doesn't respect money doesn't have family. But there's it is the phrase. This is so much more than just a job. Yeah.
Oh, well, anyone else? Even just a comment or anyone want to share a story? Lots of story sharing tonight.
It's what we do.
Yeah. Like to say, I'm a professional storyteller in 2 languages and 3 mediums.
Oh, cool. What's your other language?
Russian.
Cool.
Wow.
But I'm not a native Russian speaker, so I always give them that caveat, like I'm not a native speaker, but I used to be really fluent when I lived over there.
That is great. Yeah, and
not a lot
the neat thing is I have friends all over the world. My world is very small. I have friends in so many countries. I have guides that I've had in other countries that have come and stayed with me. I have a few passengers, not all, not most, but a few passengers that I've stayed friends with over the years. I have students that I have worked with their schools for over 20 to 30 years. They request me every year or every other year. I get them on a tour. And those kind of rewards are amazing. And when you have a student that looks at you or you help them through something, because it can happen with adults too. I mean, what you said, you're a little bit of a psychologist or psychiatrist. That is very true. You don't know why people come on tour. I've had lots of people say to me on tour, this is going to be our last trip. My wife has cancer, and we know that she's going downhill, and this is the last one. I can't tell you how many, that's probably happened to me at least 10 times over the years. Or a student who just says, you treated me differently than I'm used to being treated at school. And, I rose to the occasion, and I never would have done that had you not put your trust in me. Maybe they're considered the class clown or whatever. You have all kinds of amazing, rewarding experiences that other people never get. I can't tell you, I have drawers and drawers of personal notes. I always say, when I get old and retire someday, I'm going to whip them out, and they're all, you made this trip for me. This is the trip of a lifetime. Oh, we've always wanted to see this. You made it extra special. You don't get that every day at a regular job. You get that when you go over the road with people. That's what you get. And so there is that reward financially, but there's the reward of seeing places, but there's that people experience. And I think we're all in this job, whether you're local guiding or over the road, because that people experience, it's rewarding, and it's different than any other job. Basically, I get paid to take people on vacation, and I get paid to help make dreams come true. And not everybody gets that kind of job satisfaction.
Oh, yeah.
Boom. Well, I think that is a perfect way to end if there are no additional questions. Thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate you taking
Marianne,
your
thank you
time
so
and
much
sharing
for
with
having
us.
us.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was
Thanks,
really
Marianne.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll
I'll be
share,
in
if you
Philly
guys are
next
cool, I'll
week.
share your emails if anybody has further questions later.
Yeah, I'll see you in Philly next week sometime. I sent
Sounds
a friend
good.
to Marianne.
All right, take care. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.